But it is interesting that Apple is going down this route, and it's actually very similar to what Microsoft tried to do with Neon. If you remember Project Neon, which was the code name for Fluent Design, that came about because Microsoft was exploring a design language that could span across screens and XR. Remember, that was the whole point of Neon. It was like, this is a design language that applies to 3D, XR, and 2D screens. And this is the exact same thing with Liquid Glass. Liquid Glass started on the Vision Pro, Vision OS last year, and they've basically taken that design language and they've applied it to the rest of their systems, which is why you're seeing a lot of these translucent, transparent sort of overlays and stuff in iOS and iPadOS now, because it's a design language for XR. And so, imitating real glass, they're imitating the drawbacks of real glass, which is that it's see-through. You can see through it. So that's not always great for things like overlays. And so it is really interesting. A lot of people compared it to Aero Glass, which I can see that. I can definitely see why people would want to compare it to Aero Glass, because they've both got glass in the name for their design language. But also, there's different approaches to glass, right? Aero Glass was limited because of the time it was announced and introduced. Aero Glass is a technology, air quotes, that was introduced in 2006, I want to say 2005, 2006.
Yeah.
And so it was limited by the hardware of the time. And so if you go back and take a look at Aero Glass now, Windows Vista and Windows 7, which I did this week, these days it's very obvious to see that a lot of the effects are hard, baked into the images, into the bitmaps and stuff. So the glow effects and the taskbar, it's just an image. It's not being rendered in real time. But what was being rendered in real time back then was the blurred glass effect. So if you open up windows and stuff and you move them around, you can see behind them and it looks great. And Microsoft clearly figured out back then that we can't just have these glass panes be transparent. They have to have frosted glass or blurred glass so that you can actually see what's happening on the panel that you're looking at. Otherwise, you're just looking straight through it and contrast becomes a nightmare and you can't read or see anything that you're trying to look at on the pane that's in front of you. Because if you cast your minds back to 2004, 2005 with the Longhorn builds, Microsoft was starting to experiment with Aero back even then. And in those builds, to my knowledge, the glass panes were transparent. You could see through them and they didn't have any blur effects. And that was a problem. If you go back and try those builds, it's like, oh, this is noisy. I can't really see much. And it's the same thing that's happening with Liquid Glass on the new iOS and iPadOS stuff. And so Apple will learn this. They will figure this out. They'll go, actually, yeah, we do need to frost this glass because it's just no one can see anything otherwise. And ultimately, I just think Aero looks better.